So, in this episode, do we have a new term? Should we have a new term? What even does the new term mean? And that term is automation in quality. Can we now automate aspects of quality that we couldn't do before, thanks to the latest technologies around AI and Gen AI? Or is it just another blurring of words and everything's technically testing anyway, and automation and test automation? Or is Vernon and Richard onto something? We don't know. So we decided to discuss it. Do we know any more? You'll have to listen and find out. So enjoy.
Enjoy, folks.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Vernon Richard Show. I am Richard.
I'm Vern.
If you didn't know that, where have you been? So,
Some new people.
yeah, what's happened in the last week, mate? Anything exciting in your last week since we recorded
Just going down the AI rabbit hole a little bit more than I was before. That rhymed. So yeah, that's been good. That's been fun. Very interesting. But I think I'm just looking down I haven't really. It's a big ass rabbit hole, right? So
Yeah, nice.
because of the way we work in my day job, we are going to go, pretty hardcore on the AI stuff. So yeah, that'll be fun. It'll be interesting. Lots to read, lots to figure out, lots of experiments to run, lots of things to define and understand, and all the rest of it. So yeah, man, I think that's from a day job point of view, that's the thing. From a side hustle point of view, I've been doing lots of warm outreach. That is the terminology. So that's been going well. Man, I've caught up with some people I haven't spoken to in years, which is absolutely amazing. Still trying to figure out where the people are hiding that I can sell my thing to.
Wonder the money.
And
You
if
just
they
need to
want it,
put
I need to decide if they want
you
it.
need to put AI in the title, and then you'd be fine.
You know what I do? I was thinking about that, and I don't know about it. Well, it may or may not be in the title, but it definitely needs to be part of the offer. That is for sure. That is for goddamn sure. Yeah.
Nice,
Yeah.
excellent.
What about you, man? How's it been?
It's been all right. Yeah, quite a week at work than it has been, which is nice. But yeah, still a lot of like playing catch up. So I've been trying to get my head around or implementing some more evals for this project that I'm working on. Finally getting a decent pipeline in place, which has kind of not been our problem, but didn't exist, and that finally does exist.
Okay.
Yeah, personally, got bonus at work and a small pay increase, which was nice. Bought myself medium t-shirt. Like all this exercise is paying off.
Look at him.
And yeah, keeping this this Invisalign gum shields in. I finally think I'm used to them.
Is it only at the top you've got it?
Nah, both. Yeah.
Bloody hell.
They're really hard to tell. It's to fix
Is
this tooth here. That one there.
that the offending one?
Yeah, that's been chipping this one. So it'll take ages, but yeah, they have to push them all back. And then these top ones are being pushed forward ever so slightly to make space for where the new straight teeth will be. So it's pretty cool. They show you like step-by-step pictures of it.
Yeah.
And then you have to go in every 8 weeks for a check to see if it's actually doing what it's meant to do.
Make sure you keep them in, young man. Make sure you stick to the routine. And it's easy not to stick to the routine.
The last thing I did yesterday, which is very topic for today, is I bought the automationinquality.com domain.
Good.
Which is what we're going to talk about today, because we kind of ended last episode on that topic. And I think it's a good opportunity to think a little more broadly, I think, around... There's something in my head that thinks automation in quality is kind of the evolution of automation in testing. Purely because there's more opportunity to build tools, but also I think there's an opportunity to build tools that aren't necessarily testing related tools, and maybe they're more quality related tools. Or maybe I'm just blurring the two worlds. I don't know. Um,
Maybe is the distinction helpful? That's the thing. That's the thing to chat about maybe as well.
yeah.
Is it what's the point? We might cover some old ground perhaps, but what's why is the distinction important? That could be interesting to explore.
Yeah, so what I think I'll do is I'll basically do what I spoke to one of my colleagues today, Kalps. He does listen, so I was chatting to Kalps today, and we're on a bit of a mission internally, right? So it might sound like going back to basics, and I might have mentioned this last week. I can't remember, but we're currently going through what is QA, what is QE, what is testing, what is an SDET, what is a test engineer, what is a QE engineer, because
Wow.
we're having a few challenges when it comes to making it clear to some of the RFPs and some of the salespeople. So we kind of want to go back to basics a little bit, get a little landing page made, and kind of reverse engineer kind of what we're doing.
Hmm.
And I was chatting to Kalps today around some of the kind of throwaway tools that I've been playing with. For example, um, analyzing a story. So
Hmm.
f- from so some people might like this. I'm going to ruin it because this is what Kalp said. He was so actually no, I'll do it the way around. So I was like, we can now use AI or an LLM specifically, right, to evaluate a story. So you can
Hmm.
take the story and you can be go to an LLM, maybe give it some context of your company, but say does or the product, sorry, does this story make any sense? Is there anything missing from it, right? And you could have that run automatically as soon as someone marks a ticket as ready or whatever your process is, and have it ping you a message on Slack or send you an email or add some notes to the Jira ticket, whatever it may be, right? The options are there. Or you could have it analyze the acceptance criteria that's there. Does the acceptance criteria match the story? Is there gaps? And things like this. And I was like, God, that's automation in quality because you're almost like looking at the quality of the stories. And like Kalps went, well, just to be devil's advocate, Richard, um, if you go back to ISTQB, I think
Oh,
you'll find that that is static analysis. Um,
oh.
and I was like, you're not wrong. And then
Mhm.
also we just had a quick chat. Is that shift left testing? So is it still testing because you're testing the story, or is it an element of quality to make sure that people are writing coherent stories and coherent acceptance criteria? So that was kind of the first one. So yeah, let's discuss that one, I guess. What do you think about that one?
Maybe it depends on where you draw the distinction of the product. Because if you're interacting with the product, what is the product? Is it the application under test? Is it uh, the user story, the artifact called the user story that I'm interacting with? So depending on where you draw that line, you could either say it's testing or it's quality.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, if you want to use a hard and fast definition of, or at least colloqu- colloquially, when people say that they're testing, they're usually talking about um, the software product itself. But by thinking more expansively, you can find more opportunities to use your skills and help um, the goal, which is to deliver some working software to customers that they absolutely love. So,
that's exactly what kind of what I said to Kalps, I guess. Like, where do you draw the line?
mhm,
And it's one of the reasons why I feel like it's under quality is it feels a bit like a quality gate. Like, and I had the same view as you, is like testing. Yes, it's not about just the physical or the software product, but
mhm,
it commonly is, right?
mm,
The whole shifting left is usually to enable yourself to then do the testing easier later.
yeah,
Um,
that's what I
so
think.
I, so yeah, basically that was my first idea, right? There's stuff now, and I think you mentioned on one of your team is doing stuff with Jira. So
Mhm,
there's stuff now we can do around the words that are in a ticket.
mhm,
In the past, you could have had a quality gate that said, "Is there acceptance criteria?" and just checked that, the field or the box acceptance criteria has something in it. But now you could actually analyze that and evaluate that and almost do that before it even comes to me. Like, I could work with the PO to help them eliminate, if there is a PO, but I could help them eliminate some of those mistakes.
But the thing is, many of us have been advocating for years that that's what should be happening anyway, right? I was just on a panel, a lead dev panel, where this kind of thing came up, where it was like, it feels like the advent of AI is going to force us to do all the things that we should
Yeah,
have been doing in the first place, like all the things that
absolutely.
everyone was talking about, saying that they do.
Yeah,
I kind of likened it to me being diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, because generally speaking, we all know how to stay fit and healthy. But if you don't move enough, and if you don't eat the right things, and you don't drink the right things, you don't get enough sleep, etc., 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 then you'll probably get type 2 diabetes. That could be an outcome for you.
yeah,
And it's not because you didn't know, it's just because you didn't do the things. And similarly with software, you know, no one in 2026 is going to be like, excuse me, pipelines? What are they? I've never heard of these things before. What do you mean? Exploratory testing, you say? What is that? That's
yeah,
what I don't even, but we don't always do them. And if we do them, we probably half-arse them.
yeah.
Like, it's few and far between. If you've
Documentation
got
is the one that's coming up a lot. Like,
documentation.
no one
You
likes
know?
doing documentation.
Well, I know someone who seems to like doing documentation. Shout out to you, Emily.
Okay.
But yeah, I just think it's that. I just think it's that. I think for me, we're going to have to do all these things that we said we were going to do. And to be honest, what was I going to say? It's like, I think it's a quality thing, because if the testing is at the core, and that's about interacting with the product, everything else that you're doing. So the story thing, why that's important is because if the stories are better quality, if they're more, if the understanding is shared more closely within the team, then my testing gets, I've added more leverage to my testing.
Yeah,
And and you can make that, you could probably make that case for a lot of things that are deemed to be not testing, but you can still leverage your testing skills in pursuit of those things in order to make the testing easier.
yeah.
So,
Well, that ties
is it?
nicely into my second idea,
Oh, go on then. Go on then.
which was, if we theoretically made this change, what areas of the system would be impacted? So again, LLM knows your code base, knows your code, can look at the change, can maybe have
Mhm,
a best guess at how it might do the change,
mhm,
and then tell you what other areas may or may not be impacted. Because
mhm,
this is exactly what I used to do really well in the meetings, because I would be the one with all the knowledge of the system. I
mhm,
would be understanding how it all relates, and it would be, yeah, that's a great change, but you do know that profile uses the same code. Oh, oh no,
mhm,
we didn't know. And then
mhm,
the estimates change, the scope of the ticket changes, the testing
mhm.
scope changes. And
Yeah.
again, I think some of that can now be done programmatically. Doesn't mean it's going to get it right, and doesn't mean we shouldn't do it, right?
Mm.
But if the ticket doesn't mention, the knock-on effect of other areas, or that the other areas are going to need refactoring, because when I did that in meetings, and I'm making this up completely on the fly, like, I reckon I could probably distill, is that the word I want? Distill?
Distinct.
Like,
Distinct.
yeah, I don't know. Yeah, in what I would do into probably 5 to 10 questions.
Mm.
Now, those questions now, fear, I could build a tool that would ask
Oh
those
yeah.
10 questions with
Yep.
context and spit out an answer or a score or something, which may or may not provide me some insight. And you couldn't do that before. So
Mm.
to me, I'm not testing at this point. I'm using AI to gather information about the problem before everyone else, right? So the dev will end up doing this when they start coding it, right? If they're coding from, old school code, right? If they're sat there coding, fine.
Human authored code,
Yeah.
I think that's the way to phrase it.
But if they're vibing, I imagine the LLM might make them aware of some of the stuff, depending how good they are at prompting, or they may miss it completely. So if we can
Mm.
have a tool do this up front, I think that's useful insight.
Yeah, and I would call that quality, or is it? Maybe it's more. Maybe that is more testing because it's more about the risk, isn't it? That you're talking about and trying to surface for the thing that you're building directly. So maybe.
It's almost a step before, though, for me, because you don't know there's a risk yet. So, well, you can't, you do know there's a risk in the sense you're hypothesizing there could be a risk of a knock on.
Mm.
But
Hmm.
really, you're almost doing that research bit again before you're designing your tests or even thinking of doing any tests. And
Hmm.
again, to make the ticket go smoother, to make it easier for the dev who writes it, to make the story more clear, and also to potentially not start building something that's too big,
Hmm.
bigger than you thought,
Yep.
um, because you might not have the capacity to do that. It might be too much
Yeah.
of a risk. You could be a week away from code freeze or something, right?
Hmm.
But again, this tool could have all that information fed into it to give you that analysis and say, you know, yeah, this is good to go, or actually, no, you're missing some stuff here. So it is it is testing, but it's again, it is not what we commonly class as testing or what we would commonly automate.
I don't know though, right? Because in order for you to design and think about what it is you're going to test, you do need. To me, that sounds like you are pointing out some dependencies and some risks and things like that. And that is for me a part of testing, personally. The risk conversation is the first thing that you will probably talk about, or maybe the problem is, and the risk is second. But it's all part.
Maybe
You can't do a very good job of testing without having that conversation about where is the scope, where's the risk, do I need to worry about this part of the application, and focus on this part of the system because reasons. I think that's part of testing, personally.
is that is that because you're
Uh,
doing high quality testing, right? And you're a high quality tester. Because I don't think a lot of people. I think people do, but I also think a lot of people just literally look at what the ticket says and test what the ticket
they
says.
do, so
Right.
that happens. Even within that, there's a level of risk analysis, but I think you're right. I've certainly seen that where the focus is on the functionality of and there's reasons for that as well. Some of those it's not always that people, for want of a better word, are not being thorough. Sometimes it's a
Yep.
systemic. There's just so much stuff to get done that I'm trying to just do
Yep.
as much as possible. I've seen that happen as well. But
Okay.
yeah,
Well, you'll
yeah, I know what you
definitely
mean.
see a theme of these ideas that are they're mostly centered around the gathering of information.
Mm,
So the next one obviously is PRs, right? So the dev's gone off and built the thing.
mhm,
And then typically there'd be a PR. You may or may not be involved in the PR, right? But I
mhm.
like to be involved in the PRs.
Yep.
Pull requests for people who don't know what a PR is.
Mhm,
Um, and obviously now sometimes a PR is tiny, sometimes it's absolutely massive. So what I tend to be looking at is the quality of the code that was written,
mhm.
but also what files were changed. And again, very similar to the one we've just discussed, what else uses those files
Exactly. Yeah.
that we may have missed. So
Mm,
again, with a well-trained, agent or prompt, you could write a lot of that analysis to say, can tell me the other, I don't know, the 5 areas of the system that all share this class.
mhm.
You could ask it for a summary of the changes that have been made. Do you foresee any down effects that aren't covered here? Would you have expected some tests to fail that haven't been ran or been
Mm,
changed?
mm.
All this before we potentially run the build and everything else. So again, just summarizing the change from various testing / quality lens? Like, how big is the change? How many files were changed? Is there files that were changed that you wouldn't have think were related to the story? As the dev just snuck a few things in, which I'm not saying they shouldn't do, right? Because I
Indeed.
do that. But
Yeah, hell yeah.
if it's not in the ticket, it might not be thought about, right?
It's
Because
invisible.
again, the tester may not, the other people in the team may not notice. So again,
Hmm.
like almost like a quality gate, but semi-intelligent, you could have it always looking for things like that and just spit out information to you that you're going to read it and go, yeah, yeah, ooh, well, that's interesting. I
And
definitely
what are
think I want to
you
test that.
and what are
Like
you calling that?
PR and analyzer. I don't know.
Is that automation in testing or is that automation in quality?
Again, I think this is the fun bit of this conversation because you're testing the code,
Yeah.
but you're not exercising the code, but
Mm.
you're statically and analyzing the code to use the ISTQB's terminology. But
Shout to Couch.
the reason you're also doing it to shape the next stage of quality / testing initiatives. So
Okay.
this information may improve the testing that takes place because
Okay.
it's framing it more, which in a way for me feels quality related, even though
Mm.
the next task is a testing task. But again, the lines are blurring. So
Yeah, I think like I say, anything that is gonna amplify the testing, remove the friction from the testing, etc., etc., etc. I think that is more of a quality focus because you can just carry on doing the testing without doing that stuff. But instead of this doesn't really make any sense. But instead of getting like for one unit of effort, you get out 1 unit of testing. When you do, when you take more of a quality lens to things, when you put in 1 unit of effort, you get out 2 units of testing, or maybe you get out
absolutely.
5 units of testing.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of thinking. So if you're talking about and this is where the task analysis thing comes in. It's because you're talking about saying to yourself, "Oh, it might be useful if I knew which files had been changed as a result of this deliverable being like implemented, right?" But
Yep.
not everybody thinks like that. Not everybody thinks like that. Not everybody thinks, where else could there be some risk in this deliverable?
Yeah.
It's literally what you said before. It's like, well, the feature said it needs to do A, B, C, so I'm gonna test A, B, C in the most rudimentary way possible, and then it's out of my plate. It's into done or review or whatever, and it's off my it's out of my in tray.
Yep.
So yeah, that's what I think.
And I think like is it because the thing is, from a testing perspective, or a lot of people usually discussing it as exercising the product,
Mm,
that analysis is not. You're not even exercising the code. The code could be
mm,
faultless and be
mm,
perfectly well written. You're
uh-huh.
analyzing the fact that there may or may not be gaps or additional changes that
Yeah,
weren't factored. But when I say gaps, I mean gaps in your understanding of what was being changed and why.
yeah.
And it's also be interesting. And again, I'm not built this, but the analysis from that first tool I mentioned could then be compared to the actual implementation
Mm,
and
yeah,
see where they differed.
yep,
And yeah, have they differed because the dev has interpreted the requirements differently? Have they differed because the coding agent that was used interpreted the requirements differently? Or did one of them just get it wrong? Like, yeah,
mm,
I just think there's so much little nuances that are interesting little nuggets of information that are going to guide the testing that gets done or the assessment of quality. Like,
mm,
that's another way of looking at it. So the next one was, and I've seen people build this already, and I don't think it's that incredible, but it's interesting, is the dynamic selection of automated tests based on the changes made. So instead of having your traditional pipeline that runs all your tests in the same order every time, it picks out the high priority tests to run first. So you get that mean time to feedback quicker if some of those things are broken. So it ain't not running some of your tests. It's just cherry picking
Mm.
5, 10, 20, whatever to run
Mm-hmm.
first
Mm-hmm.
and then running the rest
The
afterwards,
rest.
which you couldn't do before. Like I wrote something 10 years ago that like basically mapped files to areas of the system and did
Yeah.
like a heat mapping score. And
Yep.
then based off that heat mapping score, decided to run tests that were tagged manually, like as in I'll tag them all with the number, and then it would
Mm-hmm.
pick the test with that number, right? But that
Yeah.
was so like
Manual.
hacky and rudimentary, and
Yes. Yep.
whereas now, you can use AI to do that. What do you think about something like that?
That to me that feels like an optimization rather than a revolution of testing or quality. It just seems like you're making your testing more efficient
Hmm.
because you're delegating the decision of what is important to the robot, to the AI, the LLM, and hoping that it's going to make a sensible decision. And ultimately, all the tests are going to run anyway, but you just want that extra rapid feedback for the more hazardous part of the platform or the application that you're testing. Um,
Okay. Yeah.
so yeah, I think it's an optimization more than anything else.
I think I've only got two more in my head, and then I'll make sure you can contribute some of these ideas if you have them. So the um the next one is one that I think a lot of people are already doing, but again, not I don't think mainstream. I think it's all the cool kids that are doing it because they've got the money and the tools.
Yeah, the
But
money,
the
bloody hell.
the automatic analysis of failed builds being done by an agent, which then in turn will try and fix it and basically open a PR that
Mm,
fixes it. Now, I've tried
mhm,
this and it was very interesting because at the time I built this, I didn't have as much knowledge on AI as I do now. And
mhm,
often it would always assume the test was wrong
mm.
and always change, like, not always, but 80% of the time would change the test to fit the broken software
I feel like we
because
talked about this a little bit.
yeah, we did because it doesn't have enough context to distinguish between the two
Well,
because we didn't have the Jira tickets, we didn't have everything else. And when I built mine, so there was so much knowledge needed that at that time it wasn't accessible because there wasn't MCP servers for everything like there is
mm,
now. So
mhm,
now I think I could build it much better.
mhm,
Um, but I do think there is value in it because sometimes it can just be a missing dependency. It could be you forgot to change a locator. And I'm not saying that that should go unnoticed, but
no,
also, what if you've gone for lunch or there's an all hands meeting for the next 2 hours? That
mhm,
ain't getting fixed because you're all away from your screens and it could
hmm,
be fixed theoretically by an agent. Well, now, is it's not testing and it's more development esque activity. So it's an investigation process and it's, you're trying to learn why. And then you're going to analyze that and put that into context and then try and fix it and then see if you fixed it.
mm,
So,
mhm.
it's mixing dev and testing. But again, it's not what I would class as testing in terms of like the testing's happened and it's more to do with analysis and reporting and
Well,
what we do next.
I don't know. It's almost like when you find a bug, you encounter a failure in the application, and you have to do some research and investigation into the failure. It kind of feels like that. And there's a I've kind of reconnected with a old friend and colleague of mine. Shout out to you, Dan, the agile guy. He's Man, working with him was so much fun. You know when you work with people who are really smart and good at something, but they're just so hype about it that they love explaining stuff to you. And that's, I just discovered this. That he was one of those people. So working with him was
Yeah.
brilliant. And he's got some. I'll put it in the show notes. He's got this post. I think he wrote it today or yesterday, where he talks about he's got two. What does he call them? He's got an agent that he treats like a partner, a thinking partner, and then I think he's got another. I'm going to call it an agent. I'll probably get the terminology wrong here, but he treats that person like an employee, and they don't do the same things. They've got slightly different missions. They've got definitely different capabilities, and the agent, let's call the employee. I can't remember the names, but the employee robot that he's got, she looks for, and it's a she, I think. She monitors some particular environment that he's responsible for or has an interest in. And when it goes down, this thing will notify the agent, I think. And then the agent will actually go and fix something. And then this thing over here will then alert him to the fact that, oh, it broke, it got fixed, it's all good. And he just wakes up and he doesn't get alerted to every little problem that happens. And I'm bringing that up because I think, is it testing? Is it development? I don't know because both roles want an explanation about what just happened. Might want it
Yeah.
for different reasons, but when you find it, when you're testing something and you find a bug, you run into this bug. There's at one extreme there is the bug report that says it doesn't work, and then at the other extreme there's a bug report that says the problem is in this file, in this function, because this variable was called this and it was blah blah and da, 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 da. And then there's a load of space in the middle. It's like figured out how much investigation should I do as a tester before I can legitimately hand that over to my dev teammate, who will then have to do the rest. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
You've just
overlap.
yeah, but you've just triggered a good thought there, which is all these things I've just mentioned from a quality perspective. The fact that it could be documented is probably a
Yeah.
higher impact on quality than debating whether this is development or testing, because a lot of developers will do an RCA, right? But
Mm.
that RCA often isn't in the ticket because you'll just get the change, or you'll just get the final thing, as in,
Oh.
I don't know, the class was missing, right? The import was missing, but you tend not to get the why. And I
Mm.
think with this now, I think some of the explanations might be better, or they'd be written in a way where the human can just disagree and agree. And then that usually might lead to better insight, which in the future, if you're centralizing a lot of that insight, you might start to spot common patterns, which ties
Mm.
nicely into my final kind of ideas is there is so much data now. There's already a lot of data, right? But if you're doing some of these tools as well, there is so much data now to give you that holistic view of quality. Where are we falling short? Is it often that our stories are not clear enough? Yeah, are we making mistakes at the code point? Is it our tests aren't comprehensive enough? Like, not to play the blame game, but to get a better idea of where our overarching processes seem to stumble down. Because we've never really had tools that do that. We've had tools that focus on testing. We've had
Mm.
tools that focus on the code. We've had
Mhm.
tools that focus on Jira or
Mm.
processes around them. But
Mhm.
now we have tools that can take all of that data
We have
and,
a tool.
and attempt to make sense of it
Yeah.
that may lead to quality insights, such as this happens a lot, this is happening a lot, that, we don't see any of this has stopped happening, which usually would be manually tracked. So again, I'm not saying that people aren't doing them, but we can
Mm.
now automate some of that a lot quicker than we could before.
It almost sounds like what we're saying is if you can document it enough, then the robot can do no wrong.
No, I'm not saying it's getting it right. It's it's more the fact that you can now collect stuff and interpret them that you couldn't do before. I still think that report lands on a human's desk and they either
Mm.
agree or disagree. But because there's so much analysis happening and documentation happening and files being saved and comments on PRs, all the things that you said before should be happening, but often don't, because we can put all the quality gates in, right? But you get just people writing a dot, and you know what I mean? People bypass it, right?
Yes.
The the robot will never do that. Well, it
Well,
might do eventually, but at the moment, it won't do that. So we're going to get a lot more data points than we've historically had, which may or may not lead to insights. But those insights now could be, you don't have to write a complicated agent to just go and ask it to stick all that together and try and make sense of it. It might come out with utter nonsense and you're like, yeah, that was a waste of time. But you could do that in minutes. Whereas previously, it takes a lot longer to do that proper root cause analysis of, why bugs have escaped or why that feature took too long, or it just ends up in conversation. So I'm not trying to remove the human aspect. We all have conversations and our, root cause calls, but maybe a smart agent could do some of that analysis of our overall approach to quality.
there's a. I'm not going to do this article justice. I will put it in the show notes, and I will urge you all, please go and read this article. So it's by John Cutler in his newsletter. He's a very, very interesting dude. Would recommend that you follow him wherever you can follow him. And he put out a newsletter. I don't know if it was his most recent one, but it's fairly recent. And he was talking about context, and he was talking about it in in the context of AI. And if I remember rightly, he was basically saying, look, the way we treat context in 2026 land of AI is that it's this thing that you kind of define and then you can just move it around and give it to an AI tool to consume and work with. And I think what he was saying is that that is not what context is. The context is a result of the interaction between the players. And that interaction is what forms the context. So if there is no interaction with the AI, is it aware of the context or not? It sounds like not. If I've understood the point of his article. So what he talks about in there is the fact that context engineering is about designing the interactions that happen. But yeah, go read the article because I'm probably butchering this quite badly.
I
But it
think in a
just
multi-agent
gets me thinking. Yeah, exactly. Go on, because that's. I think you're going to say
in
what I
a
was going to say.
multi-agent system that makes sense. But in
Yes.
my perspective here, I'm more thinking of producing information for a human to almost put
Right.
into context.
Okay.
In a multi-agent system, yes, they have to be sharing. The fact they're sharing their results with each other is building the
Mm.
context for the next decision that gets made via an agent. And I guess in what
Right.
I'm saying here is like a step before that, because can we have these agents take app context,
Mm-hmm.
apply what we've asked them to apply, and spit out what they now think it is, but for us to digest and disagree and agree on? Whereas in a multi-agent, um, what's the word? Like
System.
orchestrated kind of
Okay.
multi-agent system, where they're all
Mm-hmm.
working independently and almost vibing off each other.
Mm.
That context, they have number one, they have to share it with each other. But number two, they also have to be storing it in a place that the next random agent that might come into the mix can pick it up and run with it. So yeah, that does make sense to me.
Mm.
I don't think it's what context is in the way we talk about it though, but within the context of agents context. Makes sense. Um, but anyway, those I've had more ideas than that, but like conscious of the time and like I just think there's more options out there than we've ever had before, and I think people need to start tinkering and playing with them. So whether it's testing, whether it's quality, whether it's static analysis, like whatever it is, we can do it differently than we've ever done it before, and programmatically, and potentially quicker. Um, so yeah, what ideas or what do you think about that? Or have you got any other ideas to add on to that pile?
In some ways, it's the same as ever, because what I've always been interested in, I found particularly fascinating and cool and awesome, is when people find a way to amplify their effectiveness and just make
Mm,
what they're doing better in some way, shape, or form. You know, I used to work. I had a friend who was amazing with SQL, a colleague, Phil. Shout out to you, Phil. He always was getting on to us about you don't need to go through the GUI to go do all these steps to create a customer with an order in the right state so that you can do the test. He would be saying you can just, because we grab an anonymized production data, that there's going to be a customer in the right state in that. So all you just need is a SQL query to find a bunch of customers in that state, and then
yeah.
you're golden. And I think AI is the same thing. The skill actually is realizing that there's an opportunity to make yourself more effective in some way, shape, or form. Could be a change in the process, could be the existence of a tool or something like that. Um, Kind of doesn't matter, but you need to see the opportunity. Yeah, you can think of that entrepreneurially, which is where my mind goes based on all my side hustle stuff. I'm like, oh, this is like, entrepreneur. I've seen a gap in the market for a SQL
Yeah.
query. I'm gonna design one. Amazing. Or you could, the thing that Vitch keeps mentioning, task analysis all the time. I'm going to try and catch up with Rob Sabarin about this and say, what actually is going on when I do X? G. Paul Hill talks about this. And I'll put this in the show notes as well. The lump of code fallacy, where you think that coding is just coding. You sat at the keyboard, and actually it's not. There's three flavors of work that occur when you are coding,
Mm,
according to G. Paul Hill. Very cool. And I think the same thing applies to testing, and trying to break those things apart and say, oh, first I do this, and then I do this, and then I do this, and I have to wait for that thing to happen, and it comes back, and then I've got to go over here and do that. And then you'll start to say, right, now I've got the whole process laid out in front of me in some way, shape, or form. Like I say, that part there, I'm going after that part. I'm going to make that bit better.
yep.
I might make a little bit of a tool. It might be a
That
process change.
that is a great summary of two things actually. Number one, the conversation I had today on a separate interview was why I got into automation. It was because I wanted to be more efficient. It wasn't
Yeah.
like we were told to. It was no business value.
No.
It was I feel like I'm not being efficient, right? And
Yeah.
then number two, everything you've just said there is so perfectly spot on because that those ideas have stemmed from that I'm going to do this anyway, and
Mhm.
it's happening regardless. Right? I'm going to do it, but now I can codify some of it to make sure I do it
Mm.
to a decent standard every time, or to make sure to make sure it gets done when I'm not around. So that's why I kind of bridged the gap between testing and quality. But essentially, it is that task analysis of what do I do as a quality engineer
Mhm.
or a very skilled tester or an automator that I can now basically hand off bits of it to a computer or a robot or an agent or whatever you want to call it that I couldn't
Yeah.
do before. And that's what's got me excited, and that's why I joke about having a different name for it. But it does feel very different, and it's also another thing that I've always struggled with is I almost feel it needs distinguishing because otherwise it will just blur into the noise that is test automation. So
Well, thinking up what um I had a conversation with a colleague at work. Was it last week? It was last week. From my people team, and the question was: in a world where agents can do everything, what is your performance review about now? Like, what is the skill? What is it? And I think that's kind of what we're getting at in this conversation. It's like, what, you're saying, okay, so there's this skill where I get to build something. Because for me, it's the distinction for me is the existing skill, which AI doesn't change, is seeing an opportunity to build something or change something or spot an inefficiency or something that's ineffective or clunky or whatever, and say, I think I can make that better. I think what you're saying is, with the advent of this new technology called Gen AI, the kinds of tools that we can now make for ourselves are now next level. And the kinds of problems that we could identify but not solve are now, it's like open season now, man. It's open season. We can go after them. And so I think those two things are not the same.
they're not.
And figuring out what that skill is so we can name it and make it distinct might actually be pretty cool. Because
I don't have a good name for it, but from tinkering with a lot of this AI tooling and building some agents, there's always this aspect of it will only ever do what you tell it to do, right? So how do we stay on top of some of those instructions?
is that what Gen
Then,
AI does?
well, and then also um, the continued evaluation of what is good enough,
Yeah.
right? So in order to know what good enough looks like, you almost have to learn a lot of this stuff yourself anyway. So even though you're not the one bashing the keys, someone still needs to be learning it, or we offset more of it to off the shelf tooling and start to accept that other people know what good enough is, and we all follow suit, right? Which is never going to happen because it hasn't happened this far, right? So
No,
I can't
no,
imagine it happening anytime soon either.
no.
So I think there's that element of, again, I don't want to use the word context so much, but your product space, the technologies, the science of your area and the craft of your area, they can't be delegated to any of these tools yet because they're not. It's just made up stuff. Whereas all
Mm,
the things I just described aren't made up things;
mm,
they're real.
bloody hell.
So
Yeah.
anyway,
Heavy stuff.
let's let's end it there. um,
Yeah, I didn't. Once again, the
yeah.
time flies.
So I hope you enjoyed that. Yeah. What are you lot discussing, thinking about building at the moment? Have you been able to build something that you couldn't build before? Is it working? Are you getting value from it? We didn't mention anything today, but we had a chat before we recorded. There's lots of testing buddies and agents being built at the moment.
Mhm.
There's going to continue to be stuff like that. So, what are you building with AI, or are you just using AI to help you build the things you've already been building for a long time? Which, again, no issue with that. I just think it's time maybe for an industry to start thinking of what tools can be built that are either other aspects of testing that aren't exercising the product per se, or maybe there's something in the idea of we can help automate some aspects of quality. So yeah, let us know if you listen. Love to hear your thoughts. Um, yeah, we won't be recording next week, Vernon, just so everyone's listening. So there might be a bit of a gap in the next episode because I'm going to be at Test
Where on
Automation
earth will
Days.
you be?
I'll be at the Test Automation Days speakers dinner at
Boom.
the time that this will be getting we should have been recording next time.
Shout
So
out to
if we can
them.
Yeah, if we can find a slot, we can do something. Or if I've got energy and stuff while I'm there, maybe I can grab a few people for a bit of a
I was
chat.
going to
We'll
say,
see.
yeah.
And the week after that, we'll be
What's
recording
happening the week
live.
after that?
We'll be
Anything cool?
recording live at PeerCon
Da, da, da,
um,
da.
in Nottingham. So we're going to do a live episode there. Not sure on the format yet. Me and Vern need to find
No
some
idea.
time to work that out. But it
Mm,
could be similar to the one we did at ATD that time, where we got
mm.
basically grabbed speakers and people as they came past.
Yeah.
I quite like the idea of asking people some questions and kind of turning them into little LinkedIn posts. Like ask 20 testers the same question and kind of
Uh,
make a little short reel of that. And then we can use that to discuss some of that. But yeah, interviews with probably some of the peers organizers as well.
yeah. Shout
So
out to the
yeah, we're
test
going to kind of
peers.
do a little deep dive on the PeersCon live.
If
Well,
you
not live for
see,
you lot, but live for us.
if you're at Test Automation Days and you see Rich, make sure you say hi. If you see us at PeersCon, please come and say hi. It'll be nice to meet people in person. And if we've got a microphone, do not be shy. Come and say hello. It'll be awesome.
All right.
I think that's it, right?
Goodbye. That's it. Goodbye.
See ya.